Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's broadcast, where today we're going to be talking about rejection anxiety, what it is, how it affects us, and what we can do about it. This one I'm bringing up today because it's something that I'm currently, once again, processing and working through, and it is true fashion of what we do in thoughtraid. I always like to externalize my process so that you know that you're not alone in your own struggles with this if you also happen to deal with it. So let's jump right into that. Well, welcome back to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, and with me today is Tim. I see that face. And we are in separate locations because, interestingly enough, this is the first time I'm off on a Monday in forever, and it just, I don't know, I like to go from work to your place, Tim, but now since I've been at home all day, I'm like, it's gonna be a chill day today. How are you doing today, Tim?
Okay, just had one of those full days and I'm just feeling kind of foggy, kind of empty.
Yeah. In some ways, I kind of feel like that. I've been listening to, I don't know, I've been morbidly interested in this there's a YouTube video that exists called The Caretaker. And it's designed to share through music what it's like to have dementia from stage 1 to 6. And I don't know, I became aware of it when I was playing Terraria. You can actually find it as one of the resource packs for Terraria. And
Gotcha.
yeah, you can add dementia to your no. No, the soundtrack for The Caretaker. And so since I discovered that, I've been listening to it. It's been inspiring me for certain spooky characters that I've been making for RP. So that is part of the reason. And then also I had a grandmother. I was born with two grandparents, one on my mother's side and one on a grandmother on my mother's side, a grandfather on my father's side. And uh my grandmother ended up getting Alzheimer's, and might have possibly had it since I was born. So I'm not sure if I ever knew her without dementia. Um, and so it's been an interest of mine to kind of better understand her and what she went through.
Mhm.
And so it's a wild ride. I'm telling you, they go from all the stages from everything is fine and normal, and the music is kind of cheery to it's distorted, it's weird to it's just white noise hitting you aggressively. It's just something. Like some moments I'm
Mhm.
feeling emotional, other moments I'm scared, and other moments I'm inspired. But anyways, that I've been listening to today, and it's got me in some similar moods. uh because it's just the weirdness of the music. But anyways, that's not the point. That's not what we're talking about today. That's just context. I'm gonna play a little bit of music in the background, by the way. So I've got we recently just invested in something called Pretzel, and it will start popping up in the channel whatever music we're currently playing. So yeah, gonna do something a little bit new. Haven't done this in a long while.
Yeah, I
Anyways,
actually the other day was just thinking about pretzels and how I haven't had one in a while. I just really want one, the big sweet soft pretzels with
ooh,
mustard.
yes, and you used to work very close to Annie's.
That is correct.
That I've been wafting into GameStop all the time.
Yep.
Anyways, so rejection anxiety. This is something that I wanted to talk about because I've been working through it again, and there is no better place I find to have to face the fear of rejection anxiety than our own D&D group. I hate
That's what inspired this. Okay. I was like, where is he going with this?
Where is this coming from? Oh no! And the best part about it is, once again, I don't think there's any basis for it. And that's why I want to get this out there and deal with it, because I know whatever is in my head is like a million times worse than what actually is happening in real life.
And you were feeling this yesterday?
I was feeling it yesterday, Mr. Krabs. And it's not fun. I hate rejection anxiety. It's just, especially now that I realize all the areas that the fear of rejection plagues me, it's not fun. So first of all, I want to provide a little bit of context on what rejection anxiety is, at least the way that I understand it, so that if you've never heard of it, now you know, and you can maybe better recognize it if it's in your own life. So when I talk about rejection anxiety, what I'm talking about is this fear, essentially, of being rejected. Either that you sense that you could be rejected, and maybe there's some validity to that, or you are afraid of doing something because it might come with a side of rejection. But either way, it is not necessarily the act of being rejected, but the fear that either something I'm doing is causing people to be at odds with me, or if I do this thing, it is going to certainly end with me being ousted from whatever social group or relationship with a person that I would want to be in. So real brief, real simple. I'm honestly curious at this point, like, if there is a specific definition for it out there that's more medical in terms. Let me just take a quick brief look at that. Let's see. Anxiety. Nothing really easy that just pops right up. But I saw the first thing that came up is people who have a fear of rejection or afraid of not being liked, being abandoned, not fitting in, or being alone. People who fear rejection may struggle with low self-esteem, lack of confidence, shame, or guilt, and spend a lot of time and energy worrying about what others think of them. So here I am, Tim. I'm dealing with it again, and thanks, I hate it.
So you mentioned that the relevance to this is D&D, and for those of you who don't know, we had our D&D day yesterday, and it's pretty awesome.
It was freaking good.
Yeah. When did it start?
Well,
Was it from the outset?
It as with a lot of things in my life, it begins before it becomes the issue that it is. Like, it starts in small little places from previous sessions and previous times where I'll notice something, I won't say anything about it because I'm like, I either discredit what I'm seeing, or I feel like I'm probably making it up, which sometimes it is very much so the case. And so with this one, I guess for like a couple of sessions, I've felt kind of like I am being like, and I think I'm also, to be fair, I think I'm once again conflating the group's characters' view of my character with how they view me, which I don't know, I just keep having this problem. But I do know that Rill, which is my character in this D&D, has a tendency to, not intentionally at all, but still create dramatic moments that are either nerve-wracking for people or annoying for people or whatever. And so then I end up feeling that personally. And I think specifically that culminated with yesterday. Everyone was kind of like having their own conversations in different parts of the room. And I've been tired. I'll just say I've been tired for sure. Hey, Zap. Between like all the work that I'm doing with New Balance and every other thing that I'm trying to fit into my life, I'm tired. And so when it came to Sunday yesterday, I was just like, I was not necessarily wanting to like intentionally put myself into conversations. I was just hoping that someone would kind of come to me and talk to me. But that didn't really happen too much. And so that kind of went straight to my heart.
I noticed you were being more quiet than usual.
Yes.
So we do have some members that are quite expositional.
Yeah. And I don't know, I keep straddling between okay, so let me just recap what this is, Zap. So we're talking about the topic is rejection anxiety. And we described rejection anxiety as really the fear that you are presently being rejected, or something's going on that people don't like about you and they're kind of distancing themselves from you, whether that is actually true or not. And it is also the fear that you will do something that will cause people to reject you and just stop associating with you. And so that's all we've talked about thus far, is just what it is. And so now I'm kind of like unpacking why this is like on my mind today and why I'm working through this. And like my goal, I guess, in today's stream, is to define what rejection anxiety is, to talk about what it can do, and to look at solutions for it, because this is a regular thing that I work through, and I would like to find better coping mechanisms for it, to be honest.
I think a lot of people deal with this, and we just don't really. Well, Zach actually just said it. They don't really think that they deal with it, or they don't acknowledge it. And when I think about rejection anxiety, I think about how there are things in my life that have prevented me from taking risks that I probably should take. From having it encourages a negative self-image, or causes me to people please. It really just holds me in place. It's like, why am I one way when I'm by myself, but when I'm in front of other people where there's an expectation of me wanting them to approve of me or like me, why do I not do those same things? And it could be as simple as liking something. Like, why do I not like, I don't know, Five Guys burgers, but when I'm around this person, I do, because I don't want the conflict of rejection,
Right.
or why am I not willing to speak up in a crowd when the crowd wants to go this way to see this movie, or go to this restaurant, or to do this thing? Like, just today, Ariane's phone broke yesterday, and so I took Ariane's my wife. I took her phone to a phone place, and I'm sitting here talking to the guy, and he holds it up, and he's like, "Phone's bent. It'll be $140 something." And I'm thinking, I just priced a replacement phone on Amazon as $160. And I'm like, let me think about it. He's like, why? And I was like, ooh. He said that with kind of a tone of like disapproval. Oh no, the rejection anxiety means building.
Oh no.
And he's like, you can't get those for 160. They're about $500 new. And I'm sitting here thinking, no, they're not. But this person is believing that I'm dumb, or just wants to make the sale. Whatever. There's conflict where they're just not accepting me where I'm at, And it created this thought in my mind. And every time this happens, when I'm in a place where I need to make a decision and there's pressure on me, more people enter the store. There's like 3 people to walk in, and they're like waiting for their turn. And I'm sitting here trying to I don't want to make a $150 decision just because I feel like I have to.
Right.
And so it's like, oh no, I don't want this person to reject me because he's been working with me for 30 minutes. But basically, I don't want your service, but thanks. And so I grabbed the phone and I was like, nah, man, like I could replace this phone for that much money. And he was like, no, you can't. I was like, excuse me? He's like a 20-something dude, And it's like, why did I care that he responded that way? Why, and why did I feel this tension? Like, I couldn't disagree with him when I was like, nah, dude, like, I can get that $500 phone for $160. Like, you're wrong. Or maybe just not wrong. You're ignorant. Well, you shouldn't be assuming that I don't, whatever. But why was there that tension? Like I said, rejection anxiety prevents us from taking risks. It encourages a negative self-image, and it also encourages people pleasing. But why?
Right. I feel like it just something about, and I feel like a large portion of us, it's always a little bit different where that rejection anxiety pops up. Like for me, it pops up mostly around people that I'm closest to, which is ironic. And you and I, we had a conversation about this in a Wednesday night session about myself, about like how I've got one foot in the door, out the door, just in case, to protect myself, which is something I need to work on. And I guess because of that, like, I consequently, the closer I am to a person, the more I can sometimes feel more of that rejection anxiety, because I'm already doing something in my mind that's not healthy, and I assume the worst from other people too, maybe. I don't know. But it could be completely different for other people, where they feel that rejection anxiety, and it clearly just comes with poor decision making, isolation, and trying to find ways to take off the edge of that feeling, however that may look. Like, it does not end well for me when I feel like I could be rejected by the people that are closest to me. And it's dumb. Like, what evidence, when I calm down, take a nap, reassess the situation, what evidence do I truly have that that's going to happen? Yet, each day it's like a whole new playing field to navigate. And I don't know, it's really easy for me to kind of spiral in that, because then I begin to assume, well, they're rejecting me, so I'm just going to start distancing myself. But then the distance ends up creating distance, but it's easily stoppable if I just reach out and say, hey, I'm feeling some kind of way. But then I have to push myself to do that, and to push past my feelings, and that's hard in and of itself too. I'm expecting pain and preparing for it. Anyways, what is Zap saying over here?
He said, well, I asked him why he thinks he's a people pleaser, because he said, I'm a people pleaser. He said, I think it's mainly because I have great relationships with my closest friends, so much so that I don't really have to worry about them rejecting me. But I'm Canadian. I pretty much have to be nice.
You have to be nice.
Kind of on that, since we often talk about us being Christians, there's this weird dynamic in Christian culture where we feel the need to be nice to people. Like, I have to be nice. I have to that whole, like, if I don't do this, I'm going to be rejected by the community, or I'm going to be rejected by God, or I'm going to be rejected as a leader, or I'm going to be rejected as an image of Christ or whatever. But culturally too, just thinking about being a Canadian, there are all these cultural expectations of ways that we think we should be or ought to be. And going against those social norms, it's called deviant behavior. It's really scary. But at the same time, if you go on TikTok or most social media, it's almost trendy to be a social deviant these days. Just addressing things that are social norms for the sake of, why are these social norms? And why do I adhere to them? And why do I care so much that other people approve of me for adhering to these social norms? I don't know. In my life, that's just been such a huge thing. And I guess that's why, I'm so sensitive to the ways that things are, just because it's part of tradition and not because I've chosen to adopt that. And so I just ask a ton of questions, and it creates a lot of conflict, which I like and I dislike. But I don't know. I didn't always do that. I used to just go with the flow because I didn't want to ask those questions either, because I guess as far as rejection is concerned, I was afraid of being wrong and the implications of what it means to be wrong. Or I was afraid that the people that I was, like Zap was saying, having close friends, like, what if my friends disagree with me? What if my wife disagrees with me? what does that imply about them or me? And what if we can't reach a resolution about this? What does that imply? And so, at least what I've seen in a lot of relationships, not just my own, people just are afraid of that conflict. You know, they don't want to rock the boat.
I think the reason why rejection is such a scary thing is because of what loss might exist on the back end of it. So I'm going to take it only from my perspective here and explain why, for me, I have such a issue with anxiety with related to being rejected. So for me, between you and Dan and Eric, the three of you guys are my closest friends. And I went through quite a period where I had very little close friends. Like, from the time that I moved to North Carolina back right before 9/11 in 2001 until 2011, so about a 10-year span, I kind of went through this increasing desert. I had like a couple good friends, but I was vastly... I had my parents and other adults. That was pretty much my support structure for most of the time. I had a little bit of solace in this one gaming community called Iron Sharpens Iron. It was like a Christian gaming community. They played Battlefield. So I did that, and I had that when I was like a high school student. But other than that, the people that I was friends with in high school were mostly the social outcasts. And that's all that I could do. And I didn't really feel close to them. I just, I worked with them because those are the only people that would seemingly give me time. So when I got to college, and I had met Josh, and I had met Dan, and then eventually I began meeting more and more people, and not like really high caliber people. Like, I really view you, Tim, as a high caliber person. I view Dan as a high caliber person, like, and Eric with such rich integrity, honesty, determination to grow and to challenge me, and to also accept me without worrying about, like, oh, I'll do something and suddenly you'll be gone. I haven't really found very many people like that. There are some people that I have that I'm friends with that I would like to give more time to, but it just, the time hasn't opened up, and maybe they will also turn into some really good friends like the three of you guys. But I don't know what I did to deserve or have you as a friend, Tim, or Dan, or Eric. And so if you were suddenly to be gone from my life, that's a whole support structure that's just gone, that took years and time for me to build, and I wouldn't know, like, how the heck would I build that again? Like, will I be able to even find someone as good as the three of you guys? There's just a lot of things like that in my life. Like, I have really good parents, who I think treated me a lot better than a lot of people's parents generally treat them. And I have a great jobs and a lot of stuff. So losing any one of these things is just scary. And so, I don't know, it weighs more heavily on me for those reasons of, like, if I lose you, will I ever find someone else? Like, just thinking about, like, the relationship that I was in back in 2019, I still haven't found anyone quite like the girl that I dated. So sometimes that weighs on me. And so whenever it looks like I could be rejected, or that I will do something that will result in me being rejected, it's a scary thing for me. So that, at least those are the motivating factors why rejection anxiety has the stronghold that it has on me that I'm trying to break.
So we've actually been talking about this in one of my communications classes, and there's something called the I forget exactly what it's called, like the Johnson Square or something like that. And it talks about self-concept, the fundamental characteristics. There's four. It's multifaceted, partly subjective, enduring but changeable. So the first one is open. That's where you see yourself, or the way you see yourself is the same as what other people see in you, and it's just like out in the open, and it's fully acknowledged. There's also blind. That's where other people see things in you that you don't see. There's hidden things that you see in yourself that others don't see, and then there's unknown. That's what things that you don't see and things that other people don't see. And the class went on to talk about. Let me read this quote. It says, "In fact, several studies have shown that once we develop a self-concept, we tend to seek out others who will confirm it by treating us as we see ourselves. If you're someone with a positive self-concept, for instance, you'll likely associate with friends, coworkers, classmates, and relatives who also have a positive impression of you. In contrast, if your self-concept is negative, you may be more likely to surround yourself with people whose impression of you is negative. When you associate with people who see you as you see yourself, your self-concept is continually reinforced and it becomes even more resistant to change." So the reason I bring that up, we're talking about rejection anxiety, and Zap was saying he doesn't really experience this because he's got super close friends. And Brandon, you've also got super close friends. And I think there can be times, because it's been like this for me too, and I have to be on guard with this, where I fall into confirmation bias. And I think that I don't acknowledge rejection anxiety just because I've surrounded myself with people who will say, yes, you're good. Yes, I approve of this. Yes, the whole like codependent people pleasing. Not saying that that's what our relationship is, but I think it's really easy to fall within that. During COVID, there was all that social championing for different things. And I made a Facebook post about something. And then there is this girl that is married to a mutual friend of ours, Brandon, and she commented on the post, said that I was being a certain type of way and unfriended me. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know you. There was not any dialogue or conversation. I didn't say anything inflammatory. I was just talking about something. And they just like ghosted or cut me out. I'm like, dang. So I wonder what their curated list of friends is like. Do their friends challenge them, or do they not have to engage rejection ever, or the conflict of rejection, because they've curated such an environment? Because going back to the quote, it says, if you're someone with a positive self-concept, for instance, you'll likely associate with friends, coworkers, classmates, relatives who have a positive influence, and the inverse is also true.
It's entirely possible that she could have also been expecting more conflict or more pain, and therefore cut you out quickly because she was expecting the worst to happen, which is it's just something I'm guilty of. Sometimes I will preemptively try to avoid a conversation or distance myself because I expect it to go a specific direction. And I'm trying to prevent future pain. Something we've talked about in previous thought raids of me trying to prevent future pain.
Yeah, but reconciling how you feel in response to rejection anxiety. Just talk about those four selves: open, the blind, the hidden, and the unknown. I think the way that I've responded to it throughout my life, the fear of rejection, that is there was a lot of stuff that was hidden about me. Like Brandon, when you first met me, I was a much different person. There were a lot of facades and a lot of masks that I put on because I wasn't sure that people would like what they would see beyond that. Dan made the comment the other day that a close friend of his thought that I was a certain kind of way and passed very sound judgment on me, thinking this is, I can't trust that person because of X reason. And it's like, oh, okay, so basically they knew there was more under the surface, but they also acknowledged that I wasn't willing to show that to people. There was a part of myself that I kept hidden. And then there's that part of me that was unknown. Like I didn't know about it and other people didn't know about it. So what's there? And, thinking about like the rejection of relationships, like being married has been really cool because my wife has helped pull a side out of me that I didn't know was there, that she also didn't know was there. So just constantly accepting me and giving me grace for things and saying, hey, I like you for who you are, that helped me reach into that unknown space and totally get rid of just the hidden spots of myself. It's like, oh, okay, well, I don't need to hide anymore.
It's amazing what you'll discover about yourself when you have someone living within close proximity with you, or in the same place. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things that just kind of crop up in conversation that I never expected to have and didn't know it was there in the first place. But now there it is, because that person is there with me all the time, and so they see the redundancies of what I talk about, go through, whatever, and being outside of me, some things are just much more easily seen. So that's the beauty of marriage there for you in your case.
Yeah, and just thinking about the dating world and the friendship world in general, I'm just thinking about back when I didn't have any of these relationships, and I was wondering, a constant question that I had was, man, is there something wrong with me? That the whole doubting complex.
Oh, I understand that one.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, I mentioned how does rejection anxiety affect us? It prevents us from taking risks. Like, when I talk about taking risks, I talk about conflict. And when I talk about conflict, what I'm actually talking about is acknowledging boundaries and establishing and respecting boundaries. And I didn't really have healthy boundaries when I was younger, because I never thought there were people that would respect my boundaries or value the things that I was protecting with my boundaries. So I just never acknowledged, hey, I need to define boundaries instead of going through life apologizing for touching other people's boundaries. Like, I would apologize for everything, man. Like, oh, I'm in your way, I'm sorry. Well, maybe I'm not sorry. Maybe, like, we were both in each other's way, and that's okay. Like, oops, I don't have to be sorry for that.
There is on a connected but slightly different note, there is a YouTuber that I've started to follow, which I like. Tales Foundry, I believe his name is, on YouTube. One of the videos that he did not too long ago was about the need for more dark fairy tales for children, and the good that comes along with stuff like that. And it stuck out to me because, one, he was talking about the benefits of, like, sharing darker stories with kids and how kids are smarter than we give them credit for. And one of the things that he brought up that I've already felt, but he kind of, like, put it to literary words, was that kids just don't have context. They don't have background to explain, oh, why this is the way things are as they are. And he was positing that was the reason why we needed to stop sterilizing fairy tales, and other stories you would otherwise want to share with a child. Like you said, there's some things that were definitely darker that didn't need to be brought to a child, like things like sex or extreme violence or things like that. Oh no, it's not. I don't know if it's is it the darkest fairy tale ever written? Maybe it is. It's either that one or there was another one. It was like a picture of Elmo, but with, like, X's for eyes. That was the one I was thinking about. Anyways, either way, yeah, it's in there somewhere. That would be his thumbnail for it. But he was positing that kids, like, we're doing a disservice to children because they have the ability to get concepts that are darker, and they can really grow from that, but we sterilize any sort of media that comes their way because we're concerned something may happen or whatever. And it was like, no, don't do that. Like, we're doing them disservice. We need to let them know that sometimes there are dark things that happen in this world, but here's how you can overcome it, or here's a better way of handling it when you encounter it. And so when you mentioned that, like, you had a problem with boundaries, well, of course, like, I did too. Like, I didn't have context. I didn't know how many things I can handle before I just start to shut down because I don't have boundaries being made, or if I did have boundaries being enforced, since people kept stepping over them. Like, I think a lot of us deal with that, and as we get older, we learn what we can and cannot handle, but are still constantly learning all the time.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, just once again relating to rejection anxiety, was I didn't really understand the value of things I would put boundaries around. I was never taught that. I was never taught that I was valuable. I was never taught that I should be respected. I was never taught that there are certain ways that people should not talk to me, especially when it came to racial things. And so I would apologize for those things, like, oh, you're making an Asian joke about me. I'm sorry that I'm Asian. I'm sorry. Like, oh, yeah, that's funny. I would acquiesce to that just because I didn't want to be rejected. But it's like, let me pull that note that I made. Prevents us from taking risks, negative self-image, and people-pleasing. Like, the risk I should have taken was saying, hey, like, I'm okay if you reject me because I don't like your behaviors right now. I don't like the way that you're treating me. I don't like the way that you're seeing me or valuing me right now. So I don't care about this relationship because this relationship is not healthy for me. But I wanted those relationships because I had a lack of them, and, I see a lot of people too that have relationships and they're afraid to let them go. And that rejection anxiety holds them in place because they don't want to take those risks. They don't want to form those boundaries. They don't want to communicate or even consider what needs to be protected within those boundaries. And when we do that, it creates a negative self-image because we begin to think, oh, because I have no boundaries, because I don't engage in conflict, what should be within these boundaries actually has no value. Everything outside has value. And then you go into people pleasing because you're trying to keep your head above water. I just treading water is how I would give definition to my adolescent and young adult years. It's like I was just fighting to be acknowledged and valued.
So the next logical question that I want to ask is, what are ways that we can deal with rejection anxiety so that it doesn't eat our lunch, doesn't bully us, doesn't push us into a corner? Because I'm tired of being kicked around by rejection anxiety. Maybe I should just understand that it's going to be there and I just need to deal with it when it arises the next time. But if there is any way, again, avoiding future pain, if there's any way that we can stop that.
Maybe you should cut all the toxic people out of your life.
Yes. Like, I have so many toxic people in my life.
There's this YouTuber, TikToker, Instagrammer that we watch, and he was talking about people having enemies. There's all these like 12 and 15-year-olds posting, enemy, like, screw my enemies, whatever. I don't know why I did that with my hands. That was really weird. It's like, you're 15. What'd you do to have enemies? Like, I don't have enemies. What have you done in your life to have enemies? I don't really understand.
Great question. I mean, I feel like it's a snowball effect of, like, you grow up, you don't really have good context, good, I don't know, you don't have really strong parents in your life to kind of teach you ways of doing well with people, and so then you make these decisions and these mistakes, and people who have a better context don't like that, and then they start pushing that person away, which then causes them to snowball more, and you have this cycle of them, just trying to figure out life while everyone else is rolling down the hill a lot faster and is a lot farther than that person. I don't know. I guess that's the imagery that pops into my head of why people can make enemies at age 15, when at age 30 I don't have any enemies, and theoretically I should have more because I'm twice the age. Hurting people hurt people.
Just thinking about like all the angst that comes with middle and high school, I think it's just everybody's fighting to be noticed, and everybody's fighting to say, that's why in middle school and in high school, all the angry anti-society, anti-conformitism music really got me, because I always felt like I just wasn't good enough. And forget the institution. It's about the individual, right? I think getting older, realizing that stuff just doesn't matter. I'm not as I'm simultaneously more valuable than I thought that I was, and I have less impact than I thought I do.
Yeah, that yeah.
In other people's lives, that is. I have less impact in other people's lives than I think that I do, but I'm also simultaneously more valuable than I thought that I was.
Right. That's another balance of trying to figure out in life, knowing like I affect this and I make changes in this area, and like no, I'm not making that much of a change and need to calm down kind of thing of like be cautious, but don't be overcautious, but be cautious.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend, TL are their initials, but they said something here at my house one time that I'll never forget. It really changed my view on how I've learned to deal with rejection anxiety. And they said, we often think that we have more importance in people's lives and more stake in people's lives and more claim in people's lives than we actually do. I was like, huh, that clears up a lot. That shows me why certain people never responded to me reaching out. They didn't fulfill my expectations for them. And it's like, oh crap, I think I'm more invested in this relationship than they are.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would I feel rejected when it's just an issue of boundaries, bumping up against each other? And like maybe their life was just full. They had no space. Maybe what I wanted from them is something they couldn't give.
Right, and I think that's why you've taken on the posture of like presenting things when asked to, rather than just here, take this, take this, take this, kind of thing. Because yeah, and I know we butt heads about that before, but I tend to side more with don't give unless asked to give kind of thing. Like that's just how I live my life. It's just I feel like maybe on a smaller scale I put myself out there more, but who knows? Maybe that will change with time as I get older. I don't know. Either way, I have moments where I like to like wake up. But that, anyways, focusing. The question that I wanted to explore before we close tonight is like, what can we do? Like, just to kind of boil it down to something that we can easily remember moving forward to better ward ourselves against rejection anxiety. Has there been anything that you've found in your own life that works well?
Yeah, I actually wrote down 3 things before the stream. One is not just figure out your boundaries, but figure out your priorities. Because if you think about a castle with a moat, a castle is made out of stone and masonry and stuff, and it's meant to keep things inside to protect it. Then you put a moat around that. And so it's like, why would you have a boundary if there's nothing inside? And if something's inside, why don't you have a boundary to protect it? I mean, that's a concept that we all understand. You have $100 bill in your pocket. You put it in your pocket. You put it in your front pocket. You put it in your wallet. Your phone, whatever. You don't just leave it on the table and walk away from it. You make sure it's close to you so you can protect it. Same thing with your house. You leave your house, you lock the door. Why? Because there's stuff inside that you want to protect. So figure out your boundaries and figure out the priorities that are within the boundaries. The second thing I would say is realizing that failure doesn't determine value. That's a big one. I thought that because I had failed, that whatever I failed at meant that I didn't have value. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to move forward and grow if I never try new things? And, I said the first one, how does rejection anxiety affect us? It prevents us from taking risks. Well, how do we deal with it? We take risks, understanding that it doesn't change our value. And then the third thing is there's a big difference between a lesson learned versus insecurity confirmed.
Interesting. Okay, explain that some more.
So when something happens, when I'm dealing with the potential, or as Brandon would say, the potentiality of rejection, I have to remember whatever happens on the other side of this conflict, I can either look at it as confirming my insecurity or I've learned a lesson, right? So I had this person that I was friends with, and it seemed like they would only ever hang out if I initiated, right? And so when I talked to them, I was like, hey, I feel like there's a disconnect in how often I reach out and how often you reach out. And they said, yeah, I'm just really busy. Right. And so I had to think, am I going to allow this to confirm my insecurity that this person doesn't like me? Or am I going to learn a lesson about boundaries? Like, oh, they only have 24 hours in a day. Plus they're married. Plus they had pre-existing best friends. Why do I think that I deserve one of those places? Oh, lesson learned. Not everybody's going to have room for me, even though I'm valuable. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, the second thing, failure doesn't determine value. Just because I failed in that relationship, or just because that relationship failed, doesn't mean that I'm bad or they're bad. That just means that the relationship did not have the components of being a functioning, working, functional, healthy relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, that your value is not dependent upon whether someone does or does not accept you, or whether someone does or does not have time for you, or treat you well, or however many ways you can say "or" to that. But yeah, that like you could either choose to sink beneath the waves, or you can learn from the situation that you're going through. Okay. Wait.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we were talking about this on Wednesday. No, I was talking about this with a client last Friday. I say this because a lot's changed for me in the past 10 years as far as feeling comfortable in my own skin and safe with people, especially people that reject me. I took the time to figure out what my priorities were. And that's something that you constantly have to keep redoing because your priorities shift, and there were a lot of priorities that I had in my life that weren't my priorities. They were other people's priorities, and I was putting boundaries around other people's priorities that were being served with my resources. That wasn't healthy. And so when I started thinking, well, what do I need right now? Well, what priorities do I need to serve? Like, one of my priorities in my late 20s was getting good credit because I wanted to buy a house. And so I had to focus my finances on building credit, right? But then I had friends that were going out every night and going to restaurants and stuff, and it's like, can't afford that, man. Like, I was still unhealthy with my money, but I had a boundary there because I was trying to protect my credit. So there were a lot of things I restrained myself on, even though it meant rejection in social terms, because it meant something to me, and all throughout my 20s, I didn't have premarital sex. That was a big thing for me. And there was a lot of social pressure to do stuff like that. There were a lot of opportunities to do stuff like that, but it was just a big thing for me. And so I put a boundary around that because it meant a lot to me to be able to say, hey, wife, when I get married, this is something that I have saved just for you. And that might be cliche and whatever, but for me, it's like, okay, well, this is something that I want to protect, not because other people are telling me that I have to, but this means something to me,
Well, yeah. Hello, Tavia? I think it's Tavia. You are new to the channel. Good to hear from you.
Hello.
Tavia is saying, finally being in a position where you can say no to things you don't want to do without feeling guilty for upsetting people or having to debate and justify yourself is a very powerful place to be. Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. That's like a big thing of having to learn, of like being able to say no to things and not feeling guilty. But that's something, honestly, that I still sometimes struggle with because of the fear of missing out kind of thing, FOMO. Sometimes I'm like, I still have moments where I feel like if I say no to this, will I end up being told no to other things when I actually do have a space for it? That's something that's kind of like something I've dealt with. Oh, you're bringing out the whiteboard.
Yeah, I actually use this with a client that talks specifically about that. So Tavia, thank you for bringing this up. My
Oh,
whiteboard's really dirty, by the way.
we're going full screen on you again.
Yeah, so if you look at boundaries between you and another person, there are a couple different ways to go from here to here or from here to here, right? And the way a lot of people do this is we reach both hands through and we try to pull people over to our side. And that's what you call like debate. I mean, go on social media, like all these people that don't listen. This is like 90% talking and 10% listening. You know, and we often do that, especially when we feel unheard.
Mm.
But the way we're really supposed to do this is we're supposed to extend a hand in invitation, and that's a really poor looking hand. But it's basically saying, well, here's my boundary. Do you want to know why it's in place, or do you want to see this cool thing? I think this is gonna be a star. I'm upside down. This cool thing that I'm trying to protect over here.
Just
Do
draws
you
a
want to see what this
pentagram.
is?
You want to see this satanic ritual over here?
Should I draw like a?
It didn't
a
look like
present?
it didn't look like that. I was just having fun.
Well, what's something that would represent something good? Like a puppy, maybe? I mean, just
Perfect. You want to see this turtle over here? I love it.
yeah, but like, and this is what I'm talking about. I want to read Tavia's thing one more time. Brandon, actually, would you read her comment?
Yeah.
Her comment?
Tavia said, finally being in a position where you can say no to things you don't want to do without feeling guilty for upsetting other people or having to debate and justify yourself is a very powerful place to be. I don't want to is a valid reason not to do a thing. The boundary is in place for you, for your own safety. And then he or she said, look at the massive arm, that this man is an SCP. I love the SCP Foundation, Tavia. Thanks for the reference.
Yeah, like, just imagine if you lived life this way, where you knew what you were protecting back here because it was good. I'll give a check mark because it's good. And you put a boundary here saying, you know, you're welcome to come over here, but there's a cost of entry. And that cost of entry is you acknowledging, hey, like, what do you need from me to be welcome into your home? Like, when somebody knocks, that's a request for entry, except when you open the door and say, hey, would you like to come in? That's an invitation, right? But it's a completely different posture. And if this person says no, well, that's okay. They don't belong in your house. But if they say yes, you know, I will take your hand, like, what's going on? You know, and they ask you, like, there was a couple recently that I was talking with, and it was a lesbian couple, and you know, we were recording a podcast that we did, and we were just talking about stuff, and then they said, hey Tim, so you're a Christian? Yeah. I was like, yeah. And they said, well, what do you think about same-sex marriage? Oh, interesting. Okay, so you actually want to hear my viewpoint on this? Yeah. They invited me into conversation, right? They extended their hand and said, hey, do you want to go to this place with us and talk with us? And we did, and it was good. We don't see eye to eye, and that's okay. But there was that mutual respect because they know where my boundary was, and I protected. Like, I let them into my home. I invited them in, you know. And I don't know. That's just so special when you know what that looks like.
Yeah, so having good boundaries is a way of dealing with rejection anxiety, is what you're saying. Of, like, knowing where you begin and where you end, so that way, one, you know, like, okay, if a person isn't willing to pay the entry fee to be with you in a place, then I don't have to feel bad if they reject me because they're not willing to do what it takes for me to have a peaceable life. So that's one thing I can just say, I'm gonna put over there. That's fine. You don't belong here in the first place. And I love what Tavia is saying. Put that down to protect my earless dog and my floating sentient check mark.
Well, something else, like, oh no, I can't read what they just said before that. There was something.
The boundaries in place for your own safety, or before that?
Yeah, it is in place for your own safety, but the boundary is also in place for you to know when you need to restrain yourself,
Mm.
because that's biblically one of the first beatitudes says the meek shall inherit the earth, and meek is power under restraint, right? So like within my house, I have every right to do certain things, but outside of that boundary of my home, there are things I can't do and I probably shouldn't do, right? Because I can also be in the hot seat of rejecting another person outside my constraints.
Yeah, they're just as much as protecting your own boundaries for your own sake. Yeah, you want to also respect and support other people's boundaries too, because that's its own kind of unhealthiness. I get that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, are there any other ways that you can think of, or that are good ways of dealing with rejection anxiety? As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking myself, and also I'll throwing it out to you guys as the audience. Is there any ways that you know of as good ways to ward against rejection anxiety, or to deal with it when it crops up? Because that has been our whole topic for today, and just something that's been heavily on my mind. Is it something I'm once again working through so I don't let it control my life? Thank you very much.
Brandon, I don't know if I ever told you this. Well, I mean, the first part of this I've told you, but I used to struggle with really severe social anxiety, like
Okay.
really severe. And probably around the age 25 or 26, I was reading this book called Bringing Out the Best in People. And it was a really good book. It talked about how to engage with people from a position of like drawing them out and engaging them instead of me trying to talk all the time. But there was this part in there that talked about looking people in the eye. And I was thinking, wow, that sounds scary. And so what I purposed to do was I was like, okay, I'm going to get over the rejection of social situations, but I can't just like jump right in. I got to do something small. And so I decided that when I go out in public, I'm not going to move to the other side of the street or the other side of the hallway or whatever. I'm going to walk towards people as they're oncoming. I'm going to give them, space, obviously, but I'm intentionally going to look their way and say hello, intentionally. That was so scary because we always had this inclination to look away and deviate away from like eye contact with people because, like it or not, I mean, that's a form of rejection when somebody doesn't meet your gaze or give you the up nod, like, sup. Or if people completely disregard your space, like that was a big thing for me. It felt when I was an adolescent that people just did not notice that I existed, And so putting myself in the line of fire, so to speak, walking towards people within range where they don't have to interact with me, but it's a close enough range where they could if they choose to. And I'm looking in their direction. If they meet my eyes, it's like, oh, hi. Just, hey. And that was so stretching for me. And getting in the habit of doing that, I realized, okay, people do see me. I can look people in the eye. I can say hello. And it's those little like steps in that direction that really helped me overcome my rejection anxiety. Now, like I'm still growing, obviously, and there's a lot of rejection that I have to deal with, but it's a lot less complicated now because I know the boundaries, plus I know the reason for why I would want to connect with people in the first place.
The more I think about it, the more I'm realizing, perhaps for me, there is a very specific course that I could take. Oh my goodness! Before I get to, let me read what is Tavia saying over here. A big drop here.
Is that on Twitch or Facebook?
That's on Twitch.
Oh.
The way I've learned to deal with anxiety in general, as someone who used to commonly have panic attacks but now rarely feels anxious at all, is mindful grounding. To take the anxious thought and put it in the context of time. Anxiety is not a superpower. You can identify and follow its logic. If that logic does not make sense, the thought can be discarded. Mostly, I do this by drawing a line of history. XYZ has never happened before, so this position we in has not happened before. Therefore, anxiety couldn't possibly know the things that it's claiming. And I think going off of what you're saying there, and it's interesting, Zap said something, but it didn't pop up in the multi-chat. Anyways, going off of what you're saying there, Tavia, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I already have a set course of what I need to be doing in this situation of dealing with anxiety. Because like you said, look at the logic. So in the context of where this is popping up today, dealing with this in the roleplay group that I'm a part of, I am surrounded by really good people that all of which I'm either best friends with or good friends with. And there isn't a place, and welcome back, Forza, there isn't a place, like, none of you guys, and I say you guys, I'm talking to you, Tim, and because you're here now, have given me any basis to believe that you actually are rejecting me, or that you're looking at me as a problem. And I know that if I were to say, oh, you're doing this, or some other negative thing, you'd be like, no, that's not the case. So I need to remind myself as you're talking about, Tavia, that, like, history has no basis for me to be concerned about this, so I can better shelf it. And then I think the other portion of it is just taking a risk and having conversations about it with the people directly, which I've started to do today. So I've already begun that process of just like working out the specific anxious thoughts in my head and then being able to like put them to rest because I've got it from the source, is a step that I'm already taking in that. And Tavia is saying, anxiety is a protective mechanism in the brain. Its purpose is to predict and prevent danger. Problem is, it often predicts incorrectly or overreacts for safety. So it's on you to identify what it's actually trying to say and decide if that's valid conclusion to draw or not. And that's fair. Like here at thoughtraid, we're really big about feel what you feel, because feelings are there to help you know. Like, they don't tell you what's wrong, they just tell you that something's going on. The wrong could be you, it could be the other person, it could probably be both, but it's not going to tell you that, it's just going to tell you that something is happening. So you don't want to be emotionless. You want to feel what you feel, so that way you can understand that something is going on. Anxiety is basically a malfunctioning fire alarm. No, I wouldn't call it, to be fair, Zap, I wouldn't call it a malfunctioning fire alarm. It's just a fire alarm that just says something is happening, but didn't tell you what's happening. Because the anxieties that I'm feeling, it's definitely, this time, it's me, my brain is not properly, it's not treating me kindly. I need to wrangle it in, remind myself of what's actually happening, and refocus again and work through it. So it's doing its job. There's smoke. It's just not telling me what the source of the smoke is, and we're dealing with it now. So it's kind of how I would view it. It's like your emotions, anxiety or not, whatever the emotion is generally telling you that something is happening and giving you the general basis of what it might be, without telling you why. So like anger is telling you that there's something that needs to be fixed. There's something that needs to be confronted. Anxiety is telling you that there's something that's not logical that's going on that needs to be like looked into and dealt with. So you have like disgust, which is telling you that like something is not palpable, and needs to be worked on. It's different things. And Tavia is continuing to say feelings are often liars, not trying to harm you. They're just the very monkey brain. You're in control, make decisions. I think a malfunction is valid description in a lot of cases. Anxiety really only serves in survival mode when you're trying to figure out life. You're trying to wait, I just skipped over like a whole sentence. When you're trying to figure out life and get on your feet. It'll protect you so you can focus on getting your situation settled. However, once you're out of survival mode, anxiety tends to be too high gear to be useful. You have to manually put it into a docile position where you can hear it, but also make the decision for yourself. I think, like, I agree but like only partially with that. Like I don't know if I'm ready to say that it's malfunctioned. But I at least can say that it can't be the controlling factor. Again, it is what it is, I think. It's there to serve its purpose, and we have to learn how to interpret it and what to do with it properly. And that's kind of what I'm taking from what you're saying. I feel like a meme channel in the debating Discord server, Zap. But anyways, I guess I'll stop there. And so, do you have any other thoughts, Tim, before we close it out?
I think if you are dealing, let me do the Asian. If you're dealing with rejection anxiety, I just want to encourage you that I don't think any of us really arrive to a place where it fully goes away. I think especially the bigger you get in life, and what I mean by bigger, just like the closer you get to feeling like you've arrived in your pond, the more you realize, okay, there's a bigger pond out there. There's more rejection to be had that's bigger than me as I chase things that are bigger than where I've got. So like, if you're feeling discouragement in this arena, I just want to encourage you that the fight never really goes away, but the fundamentals in dealing with it maintain throughout everything you're going to go through in reconciling your rejection, reconciliation. So yeah, just be encouraged by that. And any step you take in that direction is good. But I would also seek counsel on that, because it's like you have some people that just become trauma enthusiasts. Like, it's really trendy to have trauma these days. But it's also not, it used to be trendy to be a people pleaser. Hashtag late 90s. So you got to find that sweet spot in between being a people pleaser and being a trauma enthusiast.
That's an interesting way I don't know if that was worded the best. Find a balance between that and being traumatized.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying is you got to have good people around you that can hold you accountable, that aren't just going to tell you what you need to hear. But at the same time, you have to be willing to say, yeah, I kind of disagree, and being willing to test that. Yeah, I mean, that's why musical instruments, for the most part, are so interesting to me. I mean, like my guitar and my little ukulele up here, they make music because they're in that tension. And every time I tune them up, I have to go up or I have to go down. And we're the same way when it comes to reconciling how we handle rejection.
Yeah, I guess, maybe the correct boundary or the balance is between boundary setting and people pleasing, because like you're going to try to people please people, so you want to make sure you're pleasing the right type of people, but at the same time you need to have boundaries, because if you're just straight people pleasing, then that has its own problems, its own pitfalls, as well as making so many boundaries that you just push everyone out and you end up isolated. Maybe that's more accurate to a statement. Find out next time. Well, anyways, I think I'll end it there on that note. I think we've covered some good ground for today, so we'll end it there. On the next episode of Dragon Ball Z, exactly. To be continued. Yes. Alright, well, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you've enjoyed the stream, make sure to like it and hit the subscribe button, as well as the little notification bell so that you will know when we go live next. If you're on Twitch or Facebook, make sure to also follow us there, because we love having you come in and chat with us. Tavia, thank you for joining us today and chatting with us. I do enjoy your perspective, and I'm grateful that you took the time to come on here and to share with us what your perspective is on this. And of course, Zap, I'm always happy when you're here with us chatting. It's always a good time. So thank you for joining us. It's been really good. But that said, we broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be live again this Friday at 7 playing some more games and talking about more philosophical things. We'll see you then.
I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why. You're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.